Ladies and gentlemen, it is me, Ian Izzle, and I am here, but not by myself.
Oh yes, at last! John baby from VocalAggression, and we are coming at you finally with our TLC preview video. And Ashton, I've just got to be very straightforward with our audience. Since our comeback as a team, I don't think I have ever looked more forward to previewing a pay-per-view than I am TLC. What a card this is. I think this has massive potential. What do you think?
TLC has consistently been probably the most underrated pay per view for the last 2 or 3 years, and I really do believe that it's going to continue that tradition this year.
I think to build upon what you were saying to me in conversation before we arrived here, there are four matches on this card that I think will really deliver, and we'll get to them shortly. But overall, though, from top to bottom, I think this entire card, if given the proper respect, in regards to certain matches, could really be a top contender for one of the great pay-per-views of 2013. I mean, this is the last pay-per-view of 2013, so what better way than to go out with a bang? Am I right?
I wouldn't say top to bottom just because the main event looks so lackluster, but literally everything else looks like it has the potential to make the main event look even worse than it already probably will.
Absolutely, my friend, absolutely. So with that said, do you want to just get started?
Yeah, let's see. What should we start with? Let's start with the. Well, you know what? There's a pre-show match, so let's start with that. Dolph Ziggler versus Fandango.
This match to me is just so. It's going to be a good match in ring because you're dealing with two talented workers. But to me, it's like it's that conundrum again of what happened to Dolph Ziggler. Because this guy, he cashes in Money in the Bank on Alberto Del Rio, gets a crazy reaction. I mean, it was insane how behind him the people that night, it was the post WrestleMania Raw, were. And then, when he had his rematch against Alberto Del Rio all these months later because he got concussed, lost the championship. It was a huge blow. Gets his rematch at Payback. They do a double turn. Crowd again seems very behind Ziggler. I mean, I thought we were going to get a very strong, sympathetic babyface world title contender slash, ultimate champion from Dolph, and we're here. And it really boggles my mind because I really do believe Dolph deserves better. Now, when you look at the critics and commentators like Jim Ross, who say that we really have nothing to fear because Dolph's on TV and he's still pushing through and he's getting these matches and he's getting the time, it kind of reminds me of how you and I felt about people like Daniel Bryan he was holding Money in the Bank, and even Dolph Ziggler himself at times earlier in his career when he'd be doing things with the likes of Brodus Clay when he first came in and Hornswoggle, and we said, don't worry because the cream always rises to the top. And I'm wondering now if really looking back at all that, if maybe the solution here is to take our own advice yet again and just wait for this to play out. It's just so disheartening because how many more of these trips are we gonna have to take? Um, this match really, I think this is the definition of a kickoff match because this really has no story. These are just two guys competing against each other for the sake to take up time on a card. Again, should be a solid bout, but I'm ultimately going with Dolph Ziggler for the victory.
Yeah, I think Dolph's going to win. I feel like there's this deep irony, or a paradox even, with Dolph Ziggler, where he is probably the best cocky heel in the business when he wants to be, and at the same time, he can be the best sympathetic babyface in the business when he wants to be.
Right,
Like,
right.
he has that great, hashtag heel, best at what I do, so sick of being so sick, all this stuff, the cocky heel character that he does, and he's amazing at that. But I feel like, and this is just a weird, like, internal feeling that I have. When the WWE did that double turn, I don't even think it was originally meant to be a double turn. Because the way you really should look at it is Dolph Ziggler cashed in on Del Rio, while Del Rio is technically a babyface. We got to realize that it was the post Raw WrestleMania, so that basically in the WWE's eyes, it was Bizarro World. They weren't going to keep him babyface after that, I don't think. And then they had that double turn match, and Sure, Del Rio may have gone a little bit overboard, but at the same time, if Ziggler wasn't so good at drawing sympathy, it would have just been like when Sheamus beat up on a babyface after they sneak attacked him from behind. It would have
Right.
just been another, babyface kind of acting like a heel, but because he's doing it to a heel, it works. But Dolph is just so good at drawing that sympathy and selling and making it look like every move kills him that it almost forced the double turn.
Right, because I remember that match and it was brutal. Like Dolph sold every spot like his career was on the verge of ending had it prolonged any more than it did.
Yeah.
And the commentary I think really sold it, towards the end of like, Dolph's in a really bad way, this, that, and the other. To me, Ashton, I felt like a babyface Ziggler had a lot of potential, and I've been very wary, especially when you look back at this year, about turning certain heels babyface because I think they have it so good. Like they hit their niche and I don't want them to really deviate from it too much because what they have is just so good. But with Dolph, I was willing to take that gamble because of just who he is as a performer. I hate that we're here because I would hate to think that because to me Dolph Ziggler's best run personally in his career was in 2011 when he was pretty much dominating the US championship scene and he had his little feud with Punk for the WWE championship. Like that to me was some of Dolph's best work. Either that or late 2010 when he feuded with Edge over the world title. And I would
See, and
hate to
I thought
think
that was one of his worst runs because he was booked so weak. He lost every match. The only way he could win was by cheating or with Vicky's help or by the frickin' spear being banned. And even then, he lost because Edge used it anyway. And it was just horrible. And it just felt so forced. It was just bad.
really, let me qualify that statement because I do agree the booking was horrendous, and I didn't even like. What really left a bad taste in my mouth was when he was awarded the world title, and then Edge beats him in his first defense. Like, what a way for a heel to overcome! Then when he's awarded the championship, you think the babyface has it, and he's able to really cinch it in the clutch right when it matters most and go on his heel run. I meant like, especially the match they had at the Royal Rumble, I thought was insanely good between those two. It's a shame that the feud it had so much potential and yet they treat it like that. But especially though 2011, that's what I really want to emphasize because he was great as U.S. champion, had some great matches, especially with the likes of Randy Orton and whatnot. The feud with Punk had some solid bouts, one of which was at a Raw that you were in attendance for. And I would just hate to think that Dolph. I don't want to use the word peaked because I think about that Miz promo and it's so wrong. But I would hate to think that we've seen the best of Dolph Ziggler already when I don't
No,
think
no,
we
no, no,
have.
no, no. The best is still yet to come with Dolph Ziggler. It's one of those things where he can only do so much. And
Right.
if they're just deciding that they don't want to give him a main event spot right now, that doesn't mean he's never going to get one again. It's just that they are focusing right now on making Daniel Bryan, and you can't make two similar baby faces at the same time, so they're focusing on Bryan. And if you ask me, that's the smarter investment too,
Yeah. No.
because
No. Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, like I feel like Bryan is more. He's probably a better employee. He seems like he's more trustworthy. He just overall, just as far as a secure investment, I think Bryan has the edge up on Dolph. But I do feel like Dolph's time is coming. But I'm not one of those people who's going to say if he doesn't win the WWE Championship in 2014, he should just retire. But because that's just a step too far. Like I feel like even you said something about him and Cody Rhodes doing that in 2012. But it's one of those things where, or maybe even it was 2013. JR said that actually, not you. You just
Yeah.
agreed.
Jim Roy. Yeah.
And it's just a step too far. Like, you should never tell somebody that if they don't reach the pinnacle of their profession within 365 days, that they should just give up, because that's dumb. But, like,
Yeah.
with Dolph, he's so good at what he does. He is an asset for the WWE. They know what they have in him. At least I hope they do. And it's just a matter of them trying to figure out how to let him bring the best out of himself consistently.
You know what? We've devoted so much time to Dolph. I want to touch a little bit too on Fandango because he's another one where I feel like I don't want him in the main event. After we go on and on about Dolph, but to me like he comes off so hot. leading up to WrestleMania, because Jericho wanted to, work with him, and he's working with him, and he beats Jericho at WrestleMania. I'll admit, to me, the finish of that match was so weak. It wasn't really that exclamation point that I think you'd want to look for on a stage like WrestleMania. But the good thing was the post WrestleMania crowd seemed really hot for him, and I guess WWE, knowing it was Bizarro World, just like Dolph's cash in, they were kind of wondering, well, I wonder if this is going to be a trend that has an upward trajectory, if it's going to be meh. And yeah,
And then Jerry Lawler endorsed it, therefore ruining any potential it had.
yeah, what did I say to you when you said that to me? I'm like, so I guess he's like the Andy Dick of the WWE. When he endorses something, it immediately dies. Thinking of that one Family Guy episode. But yeah, like as soon as he did that, it seemed to be like the uncool thing to do. And just, it really killed any momentum he had. I know Stone Cold was really high on the gimmick, and he said he felt like Fandango could have been an Intercontinental Champion within his first 6 months. Depending on how it was booked and everything. And here we are. I'm not saying I would have wanted him to hold a championship by now, but I do think he has that solid mid-card title potential. I really do. I mean, the gimmick's great. The performer behind it is solid. Summer Rae is a great valet. She does her part perfectly.
I feel like
Um,
he's in a position where he can, when Christian finally decides to, hang it up, I feel
right.
like Fandango can take over that role where you are the ultimate enhancement talent. You make everybody else look great. You put on great matches from a week to week basis. Maybe you'll get one sympathy world title for a week or two. But other than that, you're going to be the master of the mid card, and you're going to be great at putting other people over and making other people look good. And that's what Fandango can do.
Yeah, I really am beginning to believe that that's going to be his role going forward, and there is nothing wrong with that because, as so many have said, including you and I, a great isn't defined by whether they win a world title or not. You can do great things in different divisions. Just look at people who are synonymous with tag team wrestling and whatnot. A legacy can be formed many different ways, and how Fandango really makes his, I think, is entirely up to him. I just think first, before we even consider him being that enhancement talent, I would just like to see him get that one win, and I'm not even talking about over like a top guy, just even something that you would think would like tease a feud for us to really take notice. Because the funny thing with Fandango is, it's like I pay attention, and it's not like I ignore him when he's on screen, but like he's in that kind of limbo. When he wins, I really just kind of shrug it off, and when he loses, I just deem it as like normal booking of this character. So I think he needs some kind of a win that really makes me stand up, take notice, and be like, oh, is this something? Is this going to be a thing? And who knows? Maybe this would be the start of it. I don't know. I think this match could be very interesting. But if it is going to be a thing, I definitely see Dolph getting the first point on the board, as I said.
I feel like there should be a way for both of these guys to lose this match because that's just the best thing that they're both at doing.
Yeah, like a double count out or something. Um,
Like they're both such good enhancement talents. They're so good at selling. They're so good at making whoever they're working with look better. They're just both of them. I mean, I don't think Fandango is as good at Dolph Ziggler as far as just being this freakish, athletic, amazing seller who just makes every move looks like it kill you kind of thing. But that's the category that I would put him in. Maybe just a notch below Ziggler with like a Curtis Axel and that kind of thing.
right.
Like these guys are both just so good at making the other guy look good. I feel like they're just going to create like an infinite loop and just the ring is going to explode.
No, definitely. Yeah, because they really are both great at that. As you said, selling, really making the other performer look like a million bucks. And it's kind of interesting to see like who's going to do that more for the other in this match. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm fully expecting that Fandango is going to attempt to get a dance off going and Ziggler is just going to do his weird little like hip rotation thing and then punch him.
Yeah.
So, official predictions here. I think we both agree that Ziggler is probably going to win just because it's two guys that never win, but one of them's a babyface, and it happens to be Ziggler.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, let's move on. Let's see here. Let's go with the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Championship match. The Rhodes. I forget what they call themselves.
The Brotherhood.
The Brotherhood. That's such a dumb name for them. I'm going to keep calling them the Rhodes Brothers. The Rhodes Brothers versus Big Show and Rey Mysterio versus the Real Americans versus Rybaxel.
Yeah, I cannot wait for this. Oh, glorious, glorious tag team wrestling. And you know what? To me, I've really been thinking a lot about this, Ashton. I'm almost glad that there isn't a ladder involved. This way, nobody has any excuses when this match turns out to be great, because that's exactly what I'm expecting from this match. Nobody can say, oh, that's because it was a gimmicky style match. No, it's because you have some really talented guys in here. And really, when I say talented, I even include guys like Swagger and Show and Mysterio, because in tag team wrestling, I think that really accentuates the positives of even the worst overall kind of performers. And,
Swagger.
that's exactly. And that's why, I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, the Rhodes brothers have done great things for the tag team titles. Before them, of course, the Shield with Rollins and Reigns. And as I said, Ashton, on the latest episode of Twit Wow, which everybody can check out on iTunes, um, it's a tag team renaissance, because you're seeing all these teams come out of the gate. You have Xavier Woods and R-Truth. You have tons of Funk, Real Americans, the Usos, the Shield, Big Show and Rey Mysterio, even if it's only short term, it's a thing now. The Rhodes brothers. I mean, all these teams. I just counted on my hand. Those teams alone, and I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of. That's seven. Seven teams. That's insane. I thought there was a time where we didn't even have more than like four, three or four. Really, it didn't seem like we had this overflow that we're having now, and it's so good. 3MB, that's another one, even though they're a jobber team. I mean, I think they serve an essential role. Los Matadores. Um,
Every
you know,
division needs its jobbers, man.
Absolutely. And speaking of Los Matadores, I'm looking for them pretty soon to come up and be contenders in their own right. Hopefully that comes soon, maybe even on the road to WrestleMania. We'll have to wait and see. But in regards to these four teams, this is a tough one, because the Rhodes brothers have really, again, been dominating. They've been a dominant team. They've made regular defenses. They look very credible. They have great chemistry. I guess it helps that they're, related, and they were brought up together, and just Goldust being the veteran and Cody Rhodes just being the on fire young gun. It's just a great dynamic. Real Americans, you've heard me go on and on about. I love the packaging. I think overall, whether you look at singles or tag team or just men, women, whatever, overall they'd probably still break my top five in just best overall presentation in WWE, because I just love their look and I love what they're about, especially Antonio Cesaro. Um, Rybacksel's hilarious. I think really that one backstage fallout they had together really sold me on them. And, to me, I want to see more of that. What I really want for Rybacksel, since I'm, on them now, I want to see them get more backstage segments. Hell, I would like them to interrupt things like the JBL and Cole show, maybe even get their own little web series or something. Just really maximize the comedic potential of this team, because I see a lot of it. And that was just from one small taste, one small morsel in the form of that backstage fallout. Hey, why am I the medium guy? Because I'm the big guy. And it works so well.
Oh, okay, whatever. Well, did you see what we just did out there?
And then I'm sorry, Curtis Axel's facials and his laugh. It is so. I remember first hearing that laugh when Paul Heyman unveiled him as the Paul Heyman guy, and he's walking down the ramp, and then he's like, "I've arrived," and I'm like, "Oh my God, we kept you in NXT too long. You've cracked like an egg, baby, like an egg." So then you have Big Show and Rey Mysterio, and you know what? The only reason I think I'm really warming up to this team, Ashton, is first of all, I know the marketing point they're going for. One of the largest athletes teaming with the smallest athlete, or one of them anyhow, if we want to count Hornswoggle or El Torito. But, so I get that. Plus, they're two really established veterans. So really, even if you are the tag team champions or a heel team, I guess they're just add that extra dose of legitimacy there. Like, look who you're in the ring with. These two guys together have multiple world titles, multiple tag titles, that kind of shtick. So, it works. And to me, and I might as well get this out of the way now, I think Big Show's primary function here is to eat a giant swing from Antonio Cesaro, folks. You can mark me down right now. I am calling it. And if Cesaro can do it, Oh my God, his road to WrestleMania could be so promising after that because I think him and the fans will be bonded for good. I mean, that's it. You can see that they've really embraced him strongly. And
Dude, they could literally start a WrestleMania match build up at this show. Have
yeah.
Cesaro attempt to swing Big Show, but he just can't do it, and that is why the real Americans lose.
Oh, so you wouldn't have him succeed? You wouldn't give the payoff here?
Why would you give the payoff the first time? You want to make people want it.
See, but wait, let me ask you this as a follow-up question. Is your WrestleMania match Cesaro versus Big Show or Cesaro versus Swagger?
Cesaro versus Big Show.
Okay, well, see, I don't think WWE would go that route. I think they do Cesaro versus Swagger. So to me, if that's the case, it would make sense to give this payoff only
See,
because
and to me, Cesaro versus Swagger doesn't even deserve a WrestleMania match because Swagger doesn't deserve that spotlight. I'll accept Cesaro versus Swagger at Royal Rumble, and then maybe like one of them, like we'll say this just for the build up. Cesaro beats Swagger at the Royal Rumble. Swagger eliminates Cesaro in the Rumble match. Then we have the Elimination Chamber. Both of those guys are involved in the chamber, and Cesaro pins Swagger to eliminate him and end their feud. Then Cesaro moves on to the Big Show.
don't get me wrong. I love everything you've laid out, and personally, if I had to sign between that and what I'm thinking, I would sign with yours in a heartbeat. I mean, you couldn't even get the pen out of my pocket fast enough. I just think WWE's perception is going to be let's do this chasm tag team angle because we don't know if it's see the Shield is still so up in the air. If I knew more clearly what was happening with the Shield, then maybe I would think yeah they're gonna run right out of the gate with Cesaro as this powerhouse singles competitor, and it's gonna be amazing because Big Show is such an ideal opponent. Like again, we've talked about this, and I completely agree with you, but I don't know if WWE's mindset is let's have Cesaro really win the crowd over with this one move, have him look like a freak. Swagger really looks inadequate by comparison, which, let's all be honest ourselves, isn't that hard to do to begin with.
No.
And, he gets really jealous. Maybe Zeb Coulter has a conflict because does he want to go with Swagger, who, that's how this all started, was Coulter Swagger? Or does he see, like, man, Cesaro could be a lot of money, or does Cesaro not want anything to do with either one of them? Like, if I knew
They
what
could
was happening.
technically turn on Cesaro because Cesaro is more interested in pleasing the crowd than actually winning matches.
Right, and because you know what they've said about the crowd, they feel that they're nothing but a bunch of illegal immigrants sneaking into our borders. They would think that Cesaro was a sympathizer and a traitor, and then they excommunicate him from the group. Which that's a great avenue to go. I just wish. Well, actually, no, I don't wish we knew what was going on with the Shield because that's such a great. I mean, the hook is deep in the mouth, and they're reeling me in wherever they want to go. But
What in the world does this have anything to do with the Shield, though?
But see, like I'm saying if they do a tag team split with Cesaro and Swagger, I don't know if they'd want to do the same storyline with two groups because we don't know if the Shield's going to split come Mania or if they're going to do the six-man tag with the Wyatts.
That's the thing, though. We both want and even think that they're going to do the Wyatts versus the Shield at Mania. So why would Shield split?
Well, see, that's the thing. I'm trying to think though what WWE would do at the same time. That's my thing, and I don't know where their heads are at right now. But
I don't know, dude. I think that Dean Ambrose's words on SmackDown are proof enough that the Shield isn't splitting up right now.
I really hope you're right because that was some great work done by Ambrose. But more importantly, bringing it back to this match, I do think even if Cesaro doesn't nail the giant swing, specifically on the Big Show, I look for him to demonstrate some great power offense in this match. And maybe one power move on the Big Show, but not necessarily the one that we're all looking towards, what he's really established, that giant swing. And, again, I've already talked about Ryback, so Rey Mysterio I think will be great with certain people in this match, like him and Cody Rhodes mixing it up. I love their feud when Cody was a heel, with the masked Cody Rhodes, so they've already established they have great chemistry. Goldust is just on fire. The tag team division is the perfect place for him because, again, he works with Cody Rhodes, so it's not entirely on his back. So when he looks good, he can look really good and not have to bear the burden of having to be really that consistent because then he just goes to Cody Rhodes and Cody Rhodes picks up the pace. So it's really a perfect spot for him. I think this match is going to be terrific. Who's going to go over? The Rhodes brothers, their days are numbered because if they don't lose them here, I could definitely see them losing it at the Rumble. But do they lose it here? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say in matches like this, it's almost ideal for the babyface to overcome, just to say, well, they threw the kitchen sink at us and we're still standing tall. So I'm going to say the Rhodes brothers go over here, but that's very difficult for me.
Okay, just backing up because you just went through this entire match and all I really said anything about was Cesaro Big Show. So,
Right.
um, I want to point out to everybody listening to this right now, if you or anybody you know has ever complained about the WWE or any wrestling company for that matter pushing and I'm using air quotes here, thrown together tag teams, look at this match. Cody Rhodes and Goldust, even though they're storyline wise and even in real life technically related, they've never even done anything even close to the same or even cross paths in the WWE. And they brought Goldust back for the firing storyline, and now they're a tag team. That's thrown together. Big Show and Rey Mysterio is the definition of thrown together. The Real Americans was originally just Jack Swagger, the Real American, and randomly they threw Cesaro in that group. It barely even made sense. And now they are arguably the most interesting tag team in the WWE. Ryback, they were just, I mean, Curtis Axel was supposed to be the only Heyman guy. Then Ryback shows up and saves Heyman from getting beat up by CM Punk, and they were a tag team. And it just so happens that after Heyman left, they stayed. They are a thrown together tag team. All four of these tag teams, to one degree or another, are, again, quote unquote, thrown together. And they're all, at least three of the four, because I personally am not a fan of Big Show and Mysterio. And like you said, it's probably just so the Big Show can get some kind of a freak spot from Cesaro, whether it's the swing or an uppercut or something like that. But at least three of these four tag teams is freaking awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I didn't even think about that, dude. That's an excellent point. Really, when you put a lot of consideration into it, none of these tag teams really come from a quote unquote legitimate foundation.
Right. It's not like they all debuted as tag. Like the only quote unquote legitimate tag teams in the WWE right now are Los Matadores and the Usos.
Yeah, and I guess the Shield too, if you want to count them, because they
Right.
did.
Okay. Yeah. The Shield and
Yeah.
the Wyatts, I guess you would count. Right. But.
Yeah, but really, that's still a very short list, Ash, and all things considered. When you compare, like, really the bulk of the division seems to be
Well,
these.
look at the actual division itself. You have those four teams. PTP is thrown together. It just so happens that it was thrown together between TV appearances. Like they were on TV separately. I don't think Titus O'Neil was even on TV, but Darren Young was the missing link, and then he went off TV. And then it was the primetime players, Titus O'Neil and Percy Watson. And then they changed it from that to Titus O'Neil and Darren Young, and then they got called up to SmackDown. The Funkosauruses, tons of funk. It was just Brodus Clay, the Funkosaurus, and then randomly Tenzai goes on a losing streak, loses to Brodus Clay, and they start buddying up. Now they're a tag team. That's thrown together. All four teams in this match thrown together.
Yeah, I mean, when you really look at the bulk of the division, it is thrown together teams, and yet
60%.
Yes, 60%. And when you look at what they've done for the division and for the championships, I mean, you and I had a little bit of a great discussion about it today on Twitter, where we said, that there's so much stock that's been put back into the tag team championships, and I don't think 2014 is going to be any different. If anything, I think when you start calling up NXT tag teams, it's going to get even better. I'm really looking forward to this match. I think if given, I could see this match getting like 15 minutes and really stealing the show, especially towards the end, because with matches like this, it always ends in some kind of huge melee. And again, I just see the Rhodes brothers coming out on top. I'm curious what your prediction is, though. If you share my sentiments, or if you're struggling just like I was.
I'm not struggling with the idea of the Rhodes brothers retaining. I think they're losing the titles because to me, one-on-one match is kind of like maybe like 75-25. The champion's probably going to win. A triple threat match to me, 100% of the time, champion retains. And that's probably not an actual fact. It's probably not even close to 100%. But as far as my personal view and my predictions go, if it's a triple threat match for a championship, I will pick the champion every single time.
Right.
Unless it's a babyface champion going against a babyface and a heel, in which case I'll probably pick the heel.
Right.
That's probably the only condition, because or like a heel champion going against a babyface. If it's one person of one alignment going against two people of a different alignment, the champion's going to retain. That's it. Game over. Said and done. It's it. But in this case, Fatal 4 matches to me are really consistently title changers. I look all the way back to SummerSlam 2010, it was 2010. Nobody thought that Mysterio or Del Rio were going to win that match because they were irrelevant. They were supposed to be having a match together, and they just randomly got thrown into the freaking title match. So everyone was like, oh, well, they just got randomly thrown in there. There's no way either one of them are even worthy of or even thought about as being a champion. And freaking Mysterio won. Nobody saw that coming. Granted, Kane cashed in that same night, but still, the fact that Mysterio won just blew everyone's mind. Do you remember
Right.
that?
Yeah, I know what match you're talking about because Ray really was thrown in last minute. I think Undertaker was originally supposed to be in his spot, but he suffered an injury,
Yeah.
so Ray took his spot, and then it was crazy because he goes all the way to the championship, and that started the whole Kane Mysterio storyline of, well, you had a lot to gain, Ray, and now that Undertaker's in a vegetative state, who's to say you didn't take him out, and we know how that all played out. So I really get your logic here. So the question remains: what team's walking away with the straps if you feel like the Rhodes brothers are dropping it?
Well, I know for 100% fact that it will not be Big Show Mysterio because, I mean, they're just, it would make no sense in any way. I wish I could say Ryback because they're awesome, but I don't feel like the WWE is behind them, or at least not as behind them as we are. So I'm going to say the Real Americans are going to win the titles here.
That's going to be interesting because if they win, I mean, it would be great to see Cesaro have some gold again. And really, I do so conflicted about this team because you know my views about Cesaro, and yet I think they're so good that for them to not get a run would almost be an injustice. Cue the Shield. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. I think you and I can both agree it's going to be an amazing match. But
I
I'm
think
picking.
that the Real Americans win this match, and then their loss, they say they hold the titles to WrestleMania, lose the titles at WrestleMania, then they break up.
Yeah, that could work. That I think may just be what plays out. The Real Americans are on a roll. They did score a victory on the SmackDown, leading up to this against the champions, so they definitely have the momentum in their corner. Can they ride the wave? Only time will tell. So for official predictions, I'm with the Rhodes Brothers guys, and Ashton is picking the Real Americans. Interesting dynamic.
All right, let's talk about Big E Langston versus Damian Sandow, Intercontinental Championship match.
Oh man, so happy for the Intercontinental Championship these days. It's around the waist of a true, legitimate competitor here in Big E Langston. To me, this is an interesting matchup because one, I do have to give credit to WWE for giving this feud time, even if it was in a very interesting way, mainly just stare downs and each guy alternating on commentary, talking trash about the other, studying the other guy. It was an intriguing build, but it was a build that was there. This wasn't just some match that we'd go into TLC, Ashton. We're doing our live reactions. We see some backstage segment with Big E Langston and Vicky Guerrero saying, hey, I'm the Intercontinental Champion, and I want to be a fighting champion, and I want to fight tonight, and I'll even put this on the line. And then you have Damian Sandow walking in seconds later. Oh, what a coincidence. Doesn't that work out really well? So the idea that we've actually, we established this match through a number one contenders match, first of all, between Damian Sandow and Dolph Ziggler, to culminate their mini feud. And then you have Langston, really coming off of, winning the championship off of Curtis Axel, having a first successful title defense against Curtis Axel at the Survivor Series, and now he's really beginning his run, and these two are meeting in the middle. It's refreshing because you really can't argue that this was thrown together because it wasn't. It had a really nice setup. That said, Damian Sandow is in a very interesting place, and we've talked about him to death from the cash in and the loss and everything. There is no way I think that Damian Sandow's winning here. Let me put it to you that way.
Correct. I'm with you on that.
Yeah, if Damian Sandow were to win here, I wouldn't care what would happen on the rest of this card. For me personally, that would be the shock of the night because there's just no way in my eyes that he can win. That being said, I don't think he has to for this match to really, of course, be, good to even great. I'm very intrigued to see what these two can do one on one. I think my only gripe, and it really is the definition of a nitpick, I wish they would have made Damian Sandow look just a little bit more like an actual threat because I'll be honest with you, Ashton, going into this match, I still can't help but think about the tag team match that, Biggie Langston and Damian Sandow had against each other a while back, and Biggie Langston just steamrolled Sandow.
Right.
And that was still coming off the time that he was very angry and saying that he was going to end the era of John Cena. So, like Sandow has all this vitriol and all this ambition, and he wants to hurt somebody and make an impact, and yet he keeps running into brick wall after brick wall. To me, this will almost be the equivalent of a night off for Biggie Langston. Not saying that Damian Sandow won't give his all. It's just it's not going to be enough because I think he's still trying to find his way. Biggie Langston to win after a solid bout. Really, nothing more to say here.
Absolutely. I almost have to wonder if they're going to turn this into some kind of like a quasi squash match, like rather than a 30-second squash, maybe it's like a 3-minute squash where Langston takes a little bit of Sandow, like maybe Sandow hits the knees and the Russian leg sweep, and then he goes for the terminus. Langston reverses, throws Damien into the ropes, does his big like body splash thing. I think they call it a shoulder block, but it's clearly not a shoulder block. It's like a full body tackle. Does that a couple times. Sandow takes a few bumps, and then Langston hits the big ending for the win, and that's it.
Yeah, I think you pretty much just telegraphed that match. I mean, that's exactly what I see happening.
I
And
kind of hope I'm wrong just to keep Damian Sandow looking strong after that amazing performance that he put on against John Cena. But I think Mick Foley is wrong in this case.
I really believe he is. And what really concerns me about Sandow is if he loses here, where does he really go from here? Because personally, as far as the Rumble goes, he's not even on my radar. You know who's on my radar. I just really don't know what he's going to do. And he deserves to do something after that amazing outing with John Cena. And I want to believe so badly that Mick Foley's right, saying, oh, that loss is going to do more for him than a win would have. We've seen the beginning of the era of Sandow. And I want to believe it so badly because it's such a great character. And he's really upped his game, I think. And you could see, that he's hungering, to really do something. I think he's still got to find his footing, though, and TLC is not going to be that night, unfortunately.
Yep, that about sums that up. All right, now there were a grand total of 6 matches announced for this card plus the pre-show. We've already talked about 2. We have the 2 3-on-1 handicap matches left, the Divas Championship, and the big main event that we just don't care about. So, which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's really build this up. I say let's do the Divas Championship match next.
Okay. You know what? I'm not even gonna beat around the bush. AJ needs to retain.
Yeah, she does. She really does. In fact, it's funny, Ashton, because we had a really at-length discussion about the Divas division and a little bit about this match, mainly because of remarks that Natalia made on this past SmackDown on commentary, pretty much saying that AJ isn't a genuine competitor. She doesn't even care about competing. She cares about skipping, which really raised the ire of Ashton here. And then I just got angrier the more I talked about it, really at length. The thing is, this is going to be a great in-ring bout. The story is pretty much the same story that AJ's had, I think, for the last little bit of her run. It's AJ against the world, as I like to call it, or to be more apropos, AJ against Total Divas.
Right.
And this is just another little speed bump. So that's the story. Not, well, I can't even say not a bad story, because honestly, with how they've made AJ look, not giving her an ounce of credit, not conceding to her at all, that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But I guess in terms of like a story that you could have, not the worst, especially considering how the women get treated on the mainstream rosters in WWE. But again, I think the match here, the appeal to a lot of fans is the overall in-ring product that they're expecting these two women to put on.
Right.
Natalia is an exceptional technical wrestler. AJ, she's like that high-flying technical wrestling hybrid to me, and that's what makes her
She's
so
just an
exciting.
amazing in-ring performer. Like there is no like she's like the Daniel Bryan of the Divas division. There's no way to pinpoint exactly what she's best at because she's great at everything.
Yeah, no, you really can't box in a
She does the
performer.
high flying stuff. She does the technical stuff. She does the submission stuff. You know, it's everything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you want to talk about well-rounded, and
I don't think that
yeah,
there is a better selling diva, arguably in the history of the Divas division.
right. No, AJ is just to me in terms of her in-ring package, and even her character. She's really one of the only divas with an actual character,
Yep.
so to speak. And that's another thing. I'm proud of her. I'm indebted to her for what she's done for the Divas Championship, or at least tried to do. Her efforts are constantly hindered by the powers that be, but. I like Natalia, guys. You know that I've gone on record and I've said I believe Natalia deserves another run with that Divas Championship. It's just not the time right now. I will say this: if a Bella was champion, if some other lackluster heel was champion, and Natalia was coming up, I'd say, oh hell yes, get that strap on Natalia immediately. But AJ is just so good, guys, and what her run can culminate into, especially what Ash and I talked about and some of the ideas we throw around, she needs to keep that belt, even if it's just to drop it to an upcoming, former NXT prospect like a Page or what have you. That to me is a terrific payoff because AJ will have really put that person over and really put them on the map by being such a dominant champion. Because I think the worst thing WWE could do, Ashton, is let's entertain the possibility Natalia wins. Well, I would just be under the assumption that AJ would regain it before WrestleMania anyway. And why even do that when you can have AJ just go on this run? So to me, it's imperative, I think, that AJ walks out as Divas champion. I love Natalia, I really do. But first of all, she got on my bad side with her remarks about AJ, so it's going to take me a little bit of time to get over that. And second, even if she didn't, AJ's just on such a run right now. Natalia wouldn't even be able to compare if she was to get the strap. Um, it's just not her time right now. I'm sorry. So AJ for the win.
There we go. All right. Up next, we're going to do Daniel Bryan versus the Wyatt family first.
You want to talk about we went from a match that really had a very shaky to outright bad story to one that I'm really invested in now.
Yep.
And I can really attribute all of that to the SmackDown Go Home show. I mean, don't get me wrong, guys. The promos and everything leading up to this have been fantastic, and it's really nobody's fault. The problem is, I'm so into Daniel Bryan right now, I can't help but suffer from that, looking ahead syndrome. I'm not looking at the right now so much as I am the road to WrestleMania, but the Wyatts and Bryan together, as I should have known that they would do, really got me to pay attention more towards the end as we got here. But that's not to say that everything else hasn't been fantastic, because I think Bray Wyatt has cut some great promos here, Ashton. Just so good. Um, Pretty much wanting Bryan to join them. So we can see that if the Wyatts would succeed in their endeavor, it's not going to be like Kane, where, he still goes off on his own, just in a completely different direction, I guess, thanks to the Wyatts. No, Daniel Bryan would be a full-fledged member of the Wyatt family, just in time for the holidays, too. Isn't that quaint? But yeah, that's the goal. That's the end for Bray Wyatt and the unit. Daniel Bryan, of course, is just saying, no, no, no. I ain't having that. I want the undisputed WWE Championship. That's all my tunnel vision is on. You bearded freaks, get out of my face. And I should know something about being a bearded freak because mine is magnificent. But, so we have that. The Wyatts want Bryan. Bryan, of course, wants to be a man of his own free will, pursuing his own ends. And you know what? They've executed it well because Bray is trying to establish like he understands Daniel Bryan. And what I like about what Bryan's done, and it's really something that I wasn't didn't have the liberty to really discuss earlier because I wanted to see how it would all play out. But you have Bray going on like, I understand you more than you think, Bryan. How many times are you going to cross that burning bridge just to prove something to everybody else and making it seem like Bryan's fighting this losing battle. He's never going to be vindicated. He's never going to be looked upon as that guy. So because he can never beat them, join the Wyatts. That's the alternative. And what I liked before, I'd say the Raw in Seattle. That was it. The big Raw. Uh, Bryan would always have this look on his face when listening to Bray, and you couldn't tell what he was thinking. Was he thinking, "Wow, every time I've tried so hard, I've lost and lost and
And got
lost."
so far, but in the end, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, Linkin Park reference for the win. So yeah, like having that perplexed look of really almost questioning himself, but then he takes the stand in Seattle, and I love it because he also reaffirmed that stand on the Go Home Show on SmackDown. But I liked how he played it up. At first, I'll be honest, it kind of irritated me. I'm like, okay, Brian, it's your turn to have a rebuttal. It's your turn to retort, Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan, and just nothing because he just let it go, and I'm like, oh man, what are you doing? But he did it perfectly because he got the perfect crowd to give that response, and he's leading them in no chance. And just the way he did it, it wasn't your typical promo of, well, Bray, you tell me I have to join you, and blah blah blah, and giving his reasons why he's not going to. No, he showed in the simplest way possible, I don't need you because I already have a family. And it was just so well done. I loved how they've told this story so far. And as far as the payoff on TLC, I am still struggling because let me put it to you this way. I, I can't see both baby faces overcoming in their handicap match. The question is which one is going to. And that's where I'm having a problem.
I can I pitch in now?
Yes, definitely.
I think that they are both going to win their 3-on-1 matches, but only Punk is going to win clean. I think Bryan wins by DQ.
Okay.
I think that the Wyatt family just starts beating him down and get themselves disqualified.
I could see that. I could see that because that's the big difference, I think, between the Wyatts and the Shield. The Shield have an actual purpose, it's tangible. The Wyatts, I think, just want carnage. And to
They're
me,
one of those people that just want to watch the world burn.
exactly. I think they would just be looking to get the end result, and they don't care the coercive tactics they'd have to implement. They don't care how violent they'd have to be to achieve that end, and Daniel Bryan becoming one of them. So I could see that. However, I'm really torn here. You know what? I'm gonna be that guy. I'm gonna say the Wyatts beat Bryan here. Yeah.
I could buy it. I could buy it. I really could, because as long as they have to cheat to do it, whether it's just constant double teams in the corner, which isn't technically cheating, but it definitely comes off as unfair. The constant double team, and then of course you would need to have, like, Brian goes to hit a rope and somebody grabs his leg and makes him fall, like what happened on SmackDown, kind of like that, except rather than getting DQ'd, they just don't get caught and take advantage of it to win. I could see that. I could definitely see that, and it wouldn't make Brian look weak because it's freaking 3-on-1. I could see that. I just feel like there's going to be a DQ. And honestly, I kind of hope that what you say happens, because that would give the WWE even more reason to stick Bryan in the Rumble at 1. Because it's like, you haven't proven anything. You couldn't even beat the Wyatts. Punk here, he beat the Shield, and give Punk a WWE Championship match at the Royal Rumble. Because then it's like, okay, you beat the Shield. You know what? You got it. You deserve this. You earned it. You get your shot. Of course, he loses, but it's a great match, no matter
And
who it's against. If it's against Cena, holy crap, match of the year candidate already. If it's against Orton, we know that they can work great matches. To me, Punk versus whoever wins the main event tonight has to be set in stone for the Royal Rumble, and then Bryan is number 1 in the match.
I think that was great. In fact, what you said, you know what, to put it like this, I think to really sign on, I think one person coming out of their handicap match has to, continue their struggle, and one person coming out of their handicap match really should be a top contender, as you
Yeah.
said. I think that's brilliant. And to me, let me just be specific about how I see this ending. I see Luke Harper looking like a beast here because I could see Bryan neutralizing both Bray and Eric, and he gets hit with that lariat, and he is out. I could see Luke Harper looking like an absolute monster here.
I could see Harper and Bryan in the ring. They're the legal men. Harper goes to swing at Bryan. Bryan ducks it, hits the ropes on one side of the ring. Harper swings again. Bryan ducks, hits the ropes on the other side of the ring. Bray Wyatt grabs his foot. He doesn't fall flat on his face, but he turns around and kicks Bray Wyatt in the head, and then he turns around and eats a boot to the face.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, dude, I'm really, you know what? I'm so glad you said that about CM Punk and Bryan, because the more I think about it, yeah, because you know what? And even in the back of my mind, you just said it so perfectly, but I'm thinking, you know what? Whoever would, if somebody would overcome a handicap match of this magnitude, regardless of which team it was, the next logical step would have to be a title match. Because come on, what else are they gonna do after
Right.
that?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I really like how you thought about that, dude. I think I'm gonna sign on to everything you said, except the only difference being, obviously, I see the Wyatts getting a definitive win over Brian here. So yeah.
Okay. Um, we just kind of talked about Shield versus Punk briefly too, just as far as the result goes. Oh, yeah, our official predictions. I think Brian wins by DQ. You think Brian wins legit. Either way, though, our
No, no,
official
no, no.
prediction.
I think the Wyatts win legit. Let me just,
Oh,
yeah,
right. Okay, so your official
yeah,
prediction is the Wyatts. Mine is Brian by DQ. So
yeah,
technically, it is Brian winning. Um, so that's your. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm just my brain's
yeah. No,
working.
it's cool. Yeah.
Brain's working faster than my mouth apparently. Um, we both agree that Punk should win his match though?
I do. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
absolutely. Punk's overcoming the Shield.
Okay. All right. So let's actually talk about that match though, because to me, I feel like the biggest giveaway that Punk is going to actually come out of that match as the victor is that he has been basically cutting promos as if he knows he's going to lose.
Yeah, that is the brilliant thing here because I like how, and again, take notes, Cena, even though
Cena,
it's
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
it's like he gives the Shield all the credit in the world, and he's not even looking to win. I gotta tell you, dude, and for anybody who didn't see SmackDown, I would like them to go back and check it out. One, for the Shield's tag team match against the Usos, and two, the post match with CM Punk talking about, and he's just rolling his fists up with the tape, and as he's rolling it up, he's so casual, dude. You would have thought like he got back from a Starbucks having a cup of coffee or something. It's like, hey, yeah, I'm just rolling up my fists here, and I just want to let you guys know, we have that match coming up. It's a pretty big deal, and I just want you to know, you seem like a big threat, and big dogs in the house, and I'm totally comfortable getting taken down. But I think really what you should be asking yourselves is, how many of you am I going to take down with me? Because it's going to happen. You can fight and you can say believe in the Shield all you want, but I'm going to take all of you down with me.
And that's kind of like it almost reminds me of like the Big Show's promo where he's like walking out of the ring and he's like, "Well, I'll see you next week, and then I'll proceed with owning all of you."
It's like I love that casual tone because I already reserve the word terrifying for guys like Emerson the White, so it's not terrifying, but it's definitely intimidating because I look at that guy, and if he was talking to me like that, I'd be like, well, it's really not the only alternative. We could, maybe come to wrestling. No, no, no. No, no, you made your bed, and I've already rolled up the tape, so I guess we just gotta do it. So just it's gonna happen, and it's just like, well, I really thought I'd be angrier than you about this, and I really thought you'd be terrified. No, no, I'm just another day at the office. And it's just like he's totally prepared to go in there and get slaughtered, and he doesn't care because he realizes, well, taking you all down with me anyway. So, and I'm still the best of the world at the end of the day. So I love how he's so calm when he's seeing all the teeth bared at him from these hounds
Yep.
because he knows they're about to pounce and they are hungry. Because here's the thing, and that's another thing I like about it too. The Shield hasn't necessarily been on a losing streak going into this match where it's like they need it. But the thing is, because you have Dean Ambrose who lost twice in one-on-one matches to CM Punk, but they were very competitive matches. And, they have beaten down Punk in the post-match. And, of course, what set this whole thing up was a huge spear to Punk when he was trying to save Brian, who got abducted by the Wyatts. So it's been a good setup. I think the importance of this match is because it's the Shield. And when you look at everybody they've defeated, it's not really a match that they necessarily need in the sense like, oh, we haven't won in a while. It's a match they need in the sense that if they can't beat this one guy when they've beaten these amazing three people teams, what does that say about them? Even though CM Punk is great, if these three guys who have been so badass their entire run can't overcome, that to me, you could even see like Dean Ambrose just being like, well, what are we gonna do? Or Rollins and Reigns just being like, well, how are people gonna believe in us now? I think we lost a lot of our fear factor here, our intimidation factor. And I think that's what's riding on it for the Shield. You've seen the
See,
sub.
that's the thing, though, dude. The way Punk is, he'll get a roll-up victory, and then the Shield will beat the living crap out of him afterwards.
Do you see that happening, or do you just
Oh,
see that as
absolutely. What do you think he's going to stand in the middle of the ring and hit a GTS when the other two guys aren't going to come in and break the pin up?
Well, see, that's another thing too, the finish, because we both agree Punk is walking out with a victory. That's been established.
Yeah, like I think it's going to be a quick one. He's going to catch somebody in a roll up. The other two guys are going to be making a mad dash for the ring as the referee hits three.
You know what? Okay, you know what? I think I'm going to agree with you, and the only reason I'm agreeing with you is because of Dean Ambrose's work on commentary. If that hadn't happened, I was going for the finish. I think a lot of other people are still probably thinking, and that was a spear miscue by Reigns where Punk capitalizes. I can't see that now.
So
Just
you think that Spear would be hitting another member of the Shield, or just
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
turnbuckle, or
Yeah, well, originally I thought it was going to be to another member of the Shield and then Punk capitalized, but because of Dean Ambrose's work on commentary, I'm going to say there's still going to be a spear miscue, but Reigns is going to hit the steel post, and then Punk may like execute a schoolboy or something and get the 3 count.
I could see that, dude. Absolutely.
Yeah, that is really what I'm looking for here. And then Ambrose and even Rollins, who's kind of been the peacemaker, is kind of giving Reigns this look like, dude, you go from sole survivor at Survivor Series and you can't even do this. Like, it's just really that look. And then they're starting to shake their heads at him. And then Reigns just gets angry because he knows what he's capable of and he just got caught. So that, again, if it wasn't for Dean Ambrose on commentary and he did such an exceptional job, I would have said, yeah, Reigns is going to spear Ambrose, Punk is going to dispose of him, nail the GTS on Ambrose, get the win. And I don't know what would have happened to Rollins, but he's a bump machine, so we could almost probably believe that he almost died from some spot or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be your basic elementary misfire. Again, Reigns is going to taste steel post. Punk gets that quick roll up, as you said, Ashton. And you know what? Is the beatdown going to happen? That's the quiet.
You know what
Probably.
kind of annoys me about this card?
What's that?
This is TLC, and we only have one match involving tables, ladders, and or chairs.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny you say that because one columnist I was reading, he illuminated the exact same fact you just did. And his reasoning was, I don't think WWE, I think they're scared that if you gave a gimmick matchup to like Bryan or Punk or even the 4 tag teams, that we have that we talked about, Ryback, so
That
Real
people
America.
would get hurt out of it.
Well, not get hurt out of it, but really steal the limelight from
Oh, yeah, and it would.
flying the
Like,
hype.
if that Fatal 4-Way Tag Team Championship match was a ladder match, it would be like the frickin' the old school triple ladder matches with the Dudleys, Hardys, and Edge and Christian. It would literally just steal the show. You wouldn't be able to think about anything for like a half hour after that happened. They would need to cool the crowd down with like a random Brodus Clay match or something. And like I just that definitely. And if you give Punk Shield maybe like a table stipulation, Rollins will be dead halfway into the match. Reigns would spear Punk through like 3 tables, and Punk would still kick out. Like,
Yeah, like no, I really because the story to the main event, which I can't believe we have to talk about that
because
next.
like to me,
Oh.
that's what they should have done. They should have had the Fatal 4-Way Tag Team match be a ladder match. Punk Shield tables, Brian Wyatt's chairs. That's it. You just need one stipulation for 3 matches so that you can get tables, ladders, and chairs in there, and then your main event is all 3 at the same time. To me, that just makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, absolutely, and I completely agree with you. But I also, again, and I know you do too, completely agree with that columnist because the build to what is supposedly supposed to be this huge, huge can't miss matchup from WWE that really, in their eyes, could probably constitute a WrestleMania main event, but we're getting it here. And they want
I
all
think
eyes
the
on that.
fact that we aren't getting it at WrestleMania and that we are getting it at a random TLC tells you that they don't believe in it nearly as much as you're telling me they do.
Well, maybe they don't, but I think they certainly want to keep up the deception that they do if that's the case, because no other match has gotten a stip. It's only the main event, as you said, getting all 3 elements, tables, ladders, and chairs,
Right.
which, we'll see how it plays out, because, see, that's the thing. I think this is the first TLC pay-per-view to really do anything like that.
Yeah.
And all the other ones have
It
been
is. It is.
it's a gamble. It's a huge gamble to me, and not necessarily because of the people involved, like they even need weapons or props or whatever term you want to use, but because it always helps. I mean, it's tables, ladders, and chairs. So what do we expect? Tables, ladders, and chairs. So really, what the trade-off is, if WWE is not giving me all of that for these guys, then that means that the main event better have so much of all of it that I'm sick of it by the time it's over.
Yup.
Like that's a trade-off I'm looking for. But back to Punk and the Shield, like I think that this could be match of the night. And I think didn't you say that as well? Like, do you think this is going to be match of the night, or what is your?
Wait,
Or no, didn't we?
which match?
Wait, no, the Punk and the Shield. Or did we say the tag team match? Like, what did you think was going to be
Just
match
as
tonight.
far as like the most exciting match,
Yeah, just like the most. I
oh,
guess
I guarantee you the most exciting match is going to be Punk Shield. That match is going to be insane. Like, I was tempted to say Bryan versus the Wyatt family, but the Wyatt family is consistent. Like, if anyone other than Luke Harper in the ring, it's going to be a slow-paced match because that's just how they are.
right.
Punk and the Shield, though, that match is going to be in fifth gear from about 5 minutes in until it finishes. And here's my thing: there are only 6 matches on this card. Even if AJ Natalia gets 10 minutes and Biggie Langston versus Sandow, we'll even say that gets 10 minutes. We have 4 matches to fill 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
Like,
I,
I'm expecting Punk Shield to get at least 20 minutes.
Yeah, you and me both. Definitely, and I'm glad you brought that up because one thing I wouldn't want WWE to do, don't throw matches onto this card to beef it up.
Oh, you know
Have
they will. You know they will. You know we're going to get Brodus Clay versus Xavier Woods.
right.
And there's got to be at least one other match that I'm just not. Maybe we'll get Los Matadores with El Torito versus 3MB.
Again. Oh
That's what. Well, we've only ever had that match once, and it was on a SmackDown. The WWE assumes that nobody watches SmackDown, so they'll do it.
right. And you know what the sad thing is? You're right. When I would much rather have WWE have faith in this 6 match card and
Remember a
give.
couple of years ago when they had 4 matches on a Royal Rumble? How glorious that was!
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, because you'd actually get a great amount of time for your world title matches. The lesser matches, honestly, would not really get much time, but it didn't matter because then the Royal Rumble you knew would go over an hour. I mean, you'd just be sitting there and you just watch the time go by. And with me, TLC, if you keep it to a 6 person or 6 match card rather, you can give the matches that deserve a
All
lot of
right,
time, like
Royal Rumble 2011.
right.
It was Edge Ziggler, Miz Orton, a Divas match, and the Rumble match, and that was it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I see nothing wrong in a 6 match card. Even Jim Ross has gone on record and he said, I expect the main event to get 30 minutes. And honestly,
Absolutely, they'll give Cena and Orton 30 minutes for sure.
I would like to see, honestly, I'd like to see a Shield and Punk almost get the same time. And then Brian Wyatt's get like that
I would
50 to 20
say I would
minutes.
say Shield Punk gets 25. Brian Wyatt's get 20. I said Brian Harper because to me that's like the most important part of that match.
Right.
That'll get 20. The tag match will get 15 to 20, and that's it.
Right. Yeah, and then everything else, I don't know, you get your basic 8 minutes, maybe even less. I mean, I don't know. But that rounds out nicely, though. That rounds out very nicely, and I hope that's the route they go because I don't want thrown on matches on this card. I mean, I like Xavier Woods, but I don't want to see him versus Brodus Clay on a pay-per-view. I want Xavier Woods' first pay-per-view match to be something just a little bit more important, not from a
Well,
self-imposed.
what if it's a solid 5 minute match that Woods ends up winning with Lost in the Woods?
Then I guess I'd warm up to it because then he'd get his win back and on a
Right.
pay-per-view too.
Yeah.
I guess it all depends on, I guess, how they approach it. I just think, Ashton, whether I'm a fan of these guys or the potential outcomes, it's just this 6 match card, if given the appropriate time and respect, could be so good. And I don't want WWE to kind of, muddy that up with these throw-ons, with no build whatsoever. But a Shield Punk is definitely going to get 20 and maybe even over 20 minutes, and I would really like that. And Punk is going to overcome, and then hopefully, Ashton, as you said earlier, it translates into Punk saying, "Hey, I overcame the Hounds of Justice, the guys who have touted how they've dominated for well over a year. I deserve a WWE Championship match or a undisputed championship match or whatever they're going to call it at the Royal Rumble," and they give it to him because that would be amazing. Whether it
Could
is,
you, dude? Could you imagine the reaction if they had just say Orton wins? I'm not saying I actually think he will, but we'll just use this as a hypothetical. Say Orton wins the main event. Following night on Raw, it's Triple H, Stephanie, Kane, and Orton standing in the ring, and they say that they want to call out a few potential contenders for Orton's title. They call out Cena, Punk, Bryan, and I don't know, maybe Big Show.
right,
And they say that they're going to have a fatal 4-way tonight to determine the number 1 contender who will face Randy Orton, and freaking Punk wins. And say Punk wins by pinning the Big Show, or by making the Big Show tap out, or even by pinning John Cena, which would be ridiculous, I know, but just And they don't even need it. Honestly, I said Fatal 4-Way, but how hilarious would it be if they just brought those four guys out and then said, I think we're going to go with Punk.
Yeah, it's like we were originally going to do a match to have you earn it, but you know what? Punk was the only one who did anything of significance last night at the pay-per-view. So yeah, we're going with you, Punk. Best in the world.
But the crowd reaction would be so mixed because people love Punk, but they want to see Bryan get his shot, man.
They do, and you know what? How great would it be if like Bryan had this look on his face, and they'd be like, "Oh, Bryan, we're not going to leave you out. We've decided that we are going to have you in the Royal Rumble match." And then he's like, "Well, really?" And then he's like, "Yeah, but you're going to be the #1 spot." And it's just like they make both those announcements in the same segment, and just, oh man, the Authority would be such a collective douche.
They always have been, though.
It's so true.
See, and what really horrifies me about that, though, is that then John Cena would be involved in the Royal Rumble match, and you cannot say that he won't win because he is John Cena, and lol, Cena wins.
Hey, I mean, Austin's won 3. So if a person winning 3 is a thing, why couldn't John Cena? I mean, my God, if he's
because nobody wants to see it.
Well, that hasn't stopped him before. Hey guys, how do you feel about Randy Orton versus John Cena in a championship unification match? Daniel Bryan. Well, what if we throw tables, ladders, and chairs in the mix? Yes, Daniel Bryan, yes. All right, let's do it. TLC main event. Boo! Hey, shut up! Oh man, I hope Bryan can overcome all this. But Punk getting that fill-in spot for the Rumble, got no complaints from me, and that's where I really hope we go.
Yep. All right, now let's talk about the main event.
Oh man,
I tried putting it off as much as I could.
No, I'm excited for one reason, because I have teased and I have tormented our viewing audience who keeps up with us on TwitWow Ashton about the fact that one primary discussion you and I were going to have were our sentiments about the two titles being unified. Because in all honesty, I mean, we will talk about the match, but anybody who has followed us in that same vein knows that I hate it. I want nothing more than to take it out back in the barn and just shoot it and put us both out of our collective misery. I think the build has been just awful. Orton doesn't even look legitimate to me. I just want to get over this hurdle and get onto the road to WrestleMania. But I think the biggest thing to come out of this is we are only going to have one world champion going forward. And I've really thought about this, and I've weighed the scales. One huge positive being, I think, the natural elevation of the Intercontinental Championship, which I think WWE has got the same mentality with how they've treated Langston thus far. Thus far being the key, because we don't know what his road to WrestleMania is. But then the other huge drawback that everybody and their grandmothers has mentioned. If we have only one world title left, how many guys get left out in the cold that we know should at least have the chance in regards to the world heavyweight title to really see how they carry that championship and what they do for it. So in the end, I do believe I'm against it for that very reason, because how many guys are going to be left out in the cold? I mean, Ashton, what are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are, as far as the unification goes, I am both excited and kind of depressed about it. Because to me, the two titles, even though they're unifying them and trying to make it look like they're equals, it's always been WWE Title 1, World Title 2. And there have even been moments where the IC or US title has been more important than the world title. I don't know, for example, maybe like 2 months ago.
Right.
And to me, what's great about this is that if you have that top title, you are the guy. So if and when Daniel Bryan wins it, especially at WrestleMania, he is the guy. You can't take anything away from him. You can't say, oh, well, the other title is more important. No, there is no more important title at that point. But what sucks is that then the chances of guys like Bryan, guys like Punk, guys like Ziggler, even guys like Mark Henry winning that main title goes down significantly.
Yeah. I think about guys that I'm a huge fan of, Damien Sandow Antonio Cesaro, people of that nature. Hell, everybody knows, and I'm not going to go on about it, but everybody knows I'm still waiting for John Morrison to hopefully return. And I remember an interview he gave recently, and he said, you know what, when I come back, I really do believe I've gotten so much better that I would deserve to be a world champion, and it's something that I want. I want to be a world champion. And hearing that made me so happy. Well, actually, to put it more appropriately, I mean, I marked out really hard. But, seeing this happening, I look at those guys again, Cesaro, Ziggler, Morrison, other really promising mid-carders. And I'm like, your chances just dropped significantly, as you said. But then again, if we want to put a positive spin on this, if by some chance they're able to overcome those odds, what does that say? Because they do it, and then as you said, they're the man. It would go back to the Ric Flair days of when you hold that championship, you cut those promos and you say, I am the guy. If you want to be where I am, all you've got to do is beat me, and I promise you, it is easier said than done. We can return to that kind of era of wrestling. And I think, in one sense, it's important, and maybe, and I hate to say it like this, Ashton, because I think the World Heavyweight Championship has had some great bouts and has done some great things. Hell, my favorite wrestler of all time, Chris Benoit, that was the only title he really ever held. He never held the WWE Championship. The World Heavyweight Championship was his torch to run with. John Morrison has had some great bouts over the World Heavyweight Championship because he was a huge SmackDown star. So it's done great things, especially speaking from a personal standpoint. But at the end of the day, if we're really looking at it for what it is, maybe the World Heavyweight Championship was nothing more than a band-aid for certain guys of the WWE wouldn't necessarily want to say, well, we just don't see you as ever holding the WWE title, so here's a consolation prize. And maybe it's just time to take that band-aid off and really see who rises to the top.
Yeah, and to me, that's the bad news. But at the same time, the good news is this means that the Intercontinental Championship is going to be a prize worth going after now.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
for the longest time, and I know that you loved Cody Rhodes' Intercontinental Championship reign where he brought back the new white title and all that stuff. I know, I get it. But still, nobody actually cared as far as to say, wow, if somebody comes into the WWE right now and they had to go after any title, that's the one they should want. No, it was still the WWE and or the world title before that. But now the Intercontinental title is going to be number 2, clean cut. That's it. If you are in a position where you can't or won't get an opportunity to get the WWE title, that Intercontinental title is your target.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really glad we're expounding on that point now because I kind of brushed it over at the initial start of this discussion. But yeah, especially if Big E Langston has the reign that you and I really believe he is going to have. And that's just have that monster run, consistent defenses, not just at live events, but consistently on TV and pay-per-view, and really just being that beast and the guy he hands it to over after that. It's not that the Intercontinental Championship will never hit a lull period again. It's an inevitability for every championship. However, I think the WWE is taking very seriously the idea of we've got to build this championship back up this way that the guy who wins it's almost like saying I'm just one more step to that immortality known as, as I've been calling it all throughout, the undisputed WWE Championship. And to me, I think it's going to be great to get back to that kind of era, that kind of, methodology of doing business, because to me, that just makes it seem more legitimate. And the more I really think about it, again, I liked what I said earlier about the World Heavyweight Championship being nothing more than almost like a band-aid.
Right.
And I think it's time that we take it off and really see who can do it. Because look, I am a huge Damian Sandow fan. I am a huge Dolph Ziggler fan. And you better believe, I mean, when John Morrison comes back, if he comes back, I mean, he's everything. He takes up the whole radar. But if they're not good enough to hold that championship on their own merits, when they talk on the mic, if they can talk people in the building, if they can consistently put on great performances, if they can't be the champion that deserves to be the champion of champions, going forward, then they should just settle for the Intercontinental Championship, and as a consequence, so should I, because they just weren't good enough. And, not everybody can be good enough. So it's really interesting because, I think we're really reaching an end of an era. I don't ever see the World Heavyweight Championship ever really making a comeback. Because I remember they did something somewhat similar with the World Heavyweight Championship and the Intercontinental title, but the Intercontinental title shortly after got brought back because they tried getting rid of that. I don't see that happening with the world title here. I think WWE is seriously committed to this. One brand, one champion to really personify that brand. And, one of these two guys, Randy Orton or John Cena, is going to be the first holder. And really, guys, I just want to put this out for the record. I do think these are the two appropriate guys to start. I do also think Bryan deserved to be here. I mean, I'm not going to waver on that point. But these really are the two guys that seem so associated by WWE with their product, especially John Cena and Orton from a villainous standpoint. So it's not necessarily that. It's just I wish the story could have been so much better than what it was, because as you can tell at the start, I'm not friends with it at all. But I mean, this is a significant moment, and how long that this significant moment reverberates throughout the product remains to be seen. I mean, maybe 5, 10 years from now, me and Ashton will be doing a recording. I'll be like, well, a world title's been introduced. We never know in this business. But for right now, it is only going to be one champion. And we'll just see what the undercarders that you and I love so much can do going forward.
Right. And I just want to throw this out there. Because they are unifying these titles, which means we're going to have one less, I would be so ecstatic if they would finally introduce an Iron Man championship into the WWE.
Yeah.
I loved the FCW 15 Jack Briscoe championship. It was, and the inaugural champion was Seth Rollins, but guess who he had to beat to win it?
Dean Ambrose, right?
Hunico.
Oh, man.
No, Ambrose was his first major feud. They had a 15-minute match, went to a draw. They had a 20-minute match, went to a draw. They had another 20-minute match, went to a draw. Then they had the 30-minute match, and it would have gone to a draw, but then the GM at the time ended up giving them a sudden death, basically, and Rollins ended up picking up the win.
Right.
Like, that title, I want it on WWE television so bad, because I know that that's the title for guys like us. That's the title for guys who are fans of the Dolph Ziggler, Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, John Morrison. Those are the guys that would be in that title picture. You can have all the kids and all the women and all of the casual fans praising whoever the WWE Unified, United, Undisputed Champion is at the time. In the meantime, guys like us who really genuinely appreciate the in-ring work and the guys who can go for 15, 20, in some cases 30 minutes and keep it entertaining throughout the whole time, that would be the title for us.
Oh, dude, all of my yes. I'm so glad you brought that up, because even the promos would be fantastic. And to a degree, like, I think that holding that championship would have its own legitimacy at the same time, because the promos would be so simple. They'd say, well, you know what this title says about me? That I can go to distance when it matters most. And, like, it's such a great talking and selling point.
Right.
So, I really like that. And, it's been a long time.
And that's the thing, dude. Like, when Dean Ambrose says that the United States Championship is the most important championship in the WWE, I want to believe him, but I know what the U.S. Championship really is. I know that it isn't actually that. If somebody would say that about the 15 or Iron Man title or whatever they would call it in the WWE, there would be an argument to be made, because even though it isn't the main event title, it's in a completely different stratosphere.
Absolutely. And whenever that championship is defended, and that's another great thing, because one thing, and I'm not saying I want to bring back time limits for wrestling.
There can't be a fluke.
No flukes, and for a fact you're going to get a 15 or 20 or however long matchup because of the structure. So you're guaranteed that length of a match, because more often than not, I mean, you don't know how long any particular match is going to go. So to have that kind of a guarantee, like, okay, at least we got one.
And you know what? Because it's the WWE and they would want to go more big time, more recognizable, in FCW they called it the Jack Briscoe Championship. In the WWE, call it the Ric Flair Championship.
Yeah, really, no.
The 60-minute man.
Exactly, the 60-minute man, the guy who always bragged about being able to go all night long, and then whoever holds, oh, dude, already, if you called it the Ric Flair Championship, I've already got Dolph Ziggler winning it and being the inaugural champion.
Oh, absolutely. The first match, and I don't know if they would do this with, like, maybe they would do the inaugural tournament leading up to Mania, and then the match for the title would be at Mania this year, next year. But whenever you do it, I think that the first match needs to be Ziggler versus Rollins, because who makes more sense?
Oh, dude, that would be so epic. And you know what else too? It's been a while since we've had like a gimmick-esque championship, the
Yes.
hardcore title. It's been years. And the thing
And
is,
to me, the hardcore title completely lost its credibility. This is the kind of a title that is impossible to lose credibility, because if you have, it's forcing you to have legitimate reigns, because you have to defend the title. And not only do you have to defend the title, but every time you defend it, it has to be at least 15 minutes.
well, that's the thing, Ashton. When I look at the Ric Flair Championship, I'm sorry, that was just so good. That's what I'm calling it from here on out. When I look at the Ric Flair Championship, it's the perfect marriage of gimmick and credibility
Yes.
because its gimmick actually enhances the credibility. That's the beautiful part of it. It's not like the Hardcore Championship where you have to defend it 24/7, which was a lot of fun, but ludicrous at the same time when you're actually looking at it seriously. When guys like Van Dam or The Undertaker would hold it, you wouldn't take it as seriously because it's like, oh, 24/7. And you look at all the champions, like, I wish I could really get behind you, but I can't. Whereas with this, when a Dolph Ziggler or a Seth Rollins is holding it and they're going 15 minutes or 20 minutes or however long on this night or that night and they keep overcoming, like, yeah, they look awesome and
That
they
would be
look
the new
legitimate.
title that builds up your next WWE champion.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
Because the
yeah,
crowd support, because that's the kind of title that gets people behind a guy. That's the kind of, like, with Rollins, he was the FCW 15 champion. He lost it to Damian Sandow, and then within 3 months, I want to say, he was the FCW World Heavyweight Champion. Because the crowd support told the bookers, okay, this guy is crazy over. We need to give him something.
right, absolutely.
He
And to
got
me,
over because of that
yeah.
15 title.
Right, right. And you know what? To me, if they were to introduce a championship like that, I would almost fear for the Intercontinental Championship because I don't think it would take that long for the Ric Flair Championship to unseat the IC title,
You
unless
know
then
what?
WWE's.
Me, as much kind of solace as I'm taking in the IC title being something really worth going for, if they introduce something that's even more worth going for, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not saying that the Intercontinental Championship itself needs to be super prestigious. I'm just saying that you need to have a very prestigious title right behind the WWE title that's
Yes,
more attainable.
yes, absolutely. No, that Ashton. Let me just put it to you like this: it is imperative. Okay, that WWE has a secondary mid card S championship to follow
And
their
whether
one
that is
single
the
world championship.
Intercontinental title, and this is kind of where I was going with that. You introduce the FCW 15 or whatever the Ric Flair Championship, then you unify the US and the Intercontinental Championships, and then you're down to three. And I think that's what the WWE wants.
Yeah, yeah, I think this could actually be the beginning of an initiative to really shave down and just mold the championship structure so that you have the one world title, the one mid card title, maybe the gimmicky title in between the two tiers, and you have the tag team titles which are looking fantastic, and then the Divas Championship, and that's it. And honestly, when we lived in an era of the hardcore championship, the cruiserweight championship, and even the European championship, sometimes all at the same time, I believe, you can afford to have a Ric Flair championship alongside whatever your mid card title would be, even if it would be both the Intercontinental and US championships. I think you'd be able to afford it. But I have to agree with you. I think this is the initial step in a much bigger initiative to really change the overall championship structure within the company.
Right.
And I'm cool with that because you know what, to me, like, and I'm a product of the 90s, so I can't claim that, oh, I grew up on the territories because that's ridiculous. But I've always had an appreciation in certain aspects for the old school. And it just has an old school feel to me when you have that one mid card champion, that one world champion. Because then it's like, you're not ignoring the mid card champion. If anything, you're really paying attention to him because, is he going to get to that next echelon? Is he going to get to that next level? Or is he just going to be there for life? Is he going to be that mechanic? As I said, I introduced that term on an episode of Twibble. Is as far as he going to go, that mid card title, or is he going to elevate? And I like that feeling. You know what? It just really us talking about it, I feel better about it. I just hope that WWE sees in it what we see in it, because if they do, you could really make a lot of compelling television, make the mid-carders maybe even more relevant than they are now, ironically enough, with all these championships floating around. I think, you'd really, once you get that structure, it would really start to heat up and say, hey guys, this is it. So who wants it? And then you really have these guys stepping up and just owning it. Um, Even a guy like Kofi Kingston, who I feel like has just been so aimlessly lost these days. If you had like a Ric Flair championship, the matches he'd be having with guys like a Dolph Ziggler or whatever would be insane. And
Right.
even losers of matches like that would be looked upon with like, hey, that was crazy. Great job. And I think that's the type of match, Ashton, where whether you're a winner or a loser in those types of matches, like the crowd is watching you and you've
Right.
definitely gotten more stock in their eyes. Dude, do it. Ric Flair Championship, I honestly, if they'd even want to debut it at a big pay per view, WrestleMania, post WrestleMania Raw, some big event, I think we need to get the ball rolling. That sounds like an excellent idea to me.
Right. I mean, you and I talk occasionally about how my favorite pay per view of all time, and not because I actually think that the matches were just that amazing, just because of nostalgia's sake, because it was the first WWE pay per view that I remember watching with my family, and I was so into it, and it was so awesome. WWE Degeneration X in Your House. And I know people were probably thinking, oh, God, that was a horrible pay per view. But to me, just for nostalgia's reasons, I love it. And the main event in that match was Ken Shamrock versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship. But right before that, there was an Intercontinental Championship match. Now, this was December. It was December 1997. Who do you think was in that Intercontinental Championship match?
I'm going to say, let me think about the roster at that time. I'm going to say Goldust is one half.
No.
No. The Rock
Rocky Maivia.
and Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yup.
Wow. Okay, I remember their feud a little bit over the Intercontinental title. Yeah, that's what I want to get back to, baby. Absolutely. Oh man, I remember those days. I mean, my God.
And
I think, yeah.
that pay per view, those two titles were on the line. There was a tag team championship match between the New Age Outlaws and the frickin' Road Warriors. And then, well, they were the Legion of Doom, but it was the frickin' Road Warriors. But the opening match to that card was the inaugural light heavyweight championship match, where Taka Michinoku defeated Brian Christopher to win the light heavyweight championship for the first time.
Wow.
Yeah, like that right there, that pay per view sums up everything that I want the WWE to be right now. I want, instead of a light heavyweight championship, I want the Iron Man, because to me, light heavyweight implies that you can't be big and win it. I want this 15-minute, because Biggie Langston, even though he's big, he is an athlete. He could go 15 minutes.
Right.
Like, he wouldn't have been able to even attempt to win the light heavyweight championship, but that Iron Man title, absolutely. I mean, even Roman Reigns, he wouldn't have fit into that light heavyweight championship weight class, but at the same time, he could win that Iron Man title because he can go 15 minutes. He can go longer than that. But the fact that they had this inaugural thing, and now we're talking about introducing a new inaugural title, I just think it's perfect snapshot of what I want the WWE to be.
Right, right. No, definitely. When I think about that, and you have talked about the Ric Flair Championship to me when we used to call it the FCW, 15-minute championship. And you've really wanted it for a long time. And honestly, I wasn't even really thinking about it when we were doing this discussion, and I'm so glad you brought it up because if there was ever a time where that was plausible and that could be done, this is the time because you can definitely see the landscape changing, and I agree with your sentiments 100%. Uh, I will miss the World Heavyweight Championship because of the memories it's given me and the title holders that I never really thought I'd get to experience in my lifetime. That's all in the record books. But you know what? Um, I love this business, and I want us to get back to the basics of this is the guy. This is the guy behind the guy who can overtake him on any given day if given the opportunity. And then if you have the Ric Flair Championship, which that could be the championship, but one way or the other, even if it wasn't, even the Intercontinental title served that role, you have the Ric Flair Championship, which says, hey, don't neglect this guy because he can go to distance. And you better watch yourself because he proves it night in and night out. Tag team wrestling is looking great. It's like all the pieces are coming together because tag team wrestling is great right now. The Divas, at least AJ's champion, so it's got one really good leg. Let me put it to you that way.
Yeah.
You have the two titles unifying. That takes care of itself. Wow. Um, you have Big E Langston as Intercontinental Champion. You can tell that I think they're taking this seriously because as soon as he beat Curtis Axel, he gets his first defense, against Axel at Survivor Series, and then immediately, I think it was the very night after, they have Damian Sandow versus Dolph Ziggler to establish a new contender right away for Langston. They're not waiting; they're just going right at it. And the U.S. Championship, I think the only credibility that has is its holder. I mean, Dean Ambrose is a part of the Shield, and as he said on commentary at one point on SmackDown, he is the longest reigning champion currently when you look at all the champions.
Yep.
So, like you've got all these selling points. I think the pieces are so close to being put together, and the puzzle that could be staring back at us could be so nice. But the job's got to be finished. We still have a few more steps to take, and really, after hearing your pitch, Ashton, I hope we go all the way with it. Now, with that said, I mean, unless you have anything else you want to say, I mean, do you really even want to touch on this match all that much? Or, like, where do you want to go from here?
Let's just throw predictions out there for who we think's gonna win.
Okay. Um, Really looking at this, guys, looking at the, entirety of the build and who's involved and who we're talking about, I do think that we're going to see a repeat of 2001 when this was done for the first time, and we're going to have our inaugural champion be a heel, simply because whatever babyface WWE has in mind to overcome him, Daniel Bryan, Daniel Bryan, is going to be amazing.
I want to get that checked out there, bud.
Yeah, I might want to go to local Eckerd, get some cough syrup or something. But I think whatever babyface they'd be building up to want to overthrow the heel, which I'm really hoping is Daniel Bryan through the Rumble, which we'll talk about that at length in our Road to WrestleMania commentary, but it could be a really huge payoff. Even if it is John Cena, maybe you could make the same case because it's John freaking Cena and it would be a WrestleMania main event. But I think Orton especially. But you know what? Let me just say this. I will only prefer Orton if they get it together and they start booking him as more of a legitimate threat when he is the champion of champions. No more crap, no more making him look pathetic. He needs to really start, even if it's with the authorities' help. I want to see the Orton in tandem with the Authority who really beat the crap out of the Miz.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. And that's what I need to see if he's going to be the holder of this championship, which I'm supposed to think is the end all be all for every performer who laces up a pair of boots. If not, then to be perfectly honest, at the risk of all the ire that I may receive, I would really much rather have John Cena win it because at least John Cena is legitimate every single night, if for no other reason because he is the man.
Right.
So I would say ultimately I prefer Orton simply because of basic 101 storytelling, but it's only contingent upon him really looking credible going forward. If WWE can't do that, I prefer Cena. But as far as who I think is going to win, I am going to say Orton due to interference on John Cena's behalf. Right when he's about to win it, they cost him the championship. They probably being a member of the Authority.
Let me be perfectly clear here.
Okay.
My official prediction for who wins this match hinges upon who wins their 3-on-1 match.
Okay.
If CM Punk wins his 3-on-1 match against the Shield, I think Orton wins this match. But if Daniel Bryan wins his 3-on-1 match against the Wyatt family, I think Cena wins.
Okay, now I just have to be that guy. If by some chance both babyfaces overcome their odds, then who wins? Because, I mean, stranger things have happened, and I think we have to entertain that possibility.
If they both win, then I'd say Orton.
Okay.
Because if they both win, then it gives the Authority a reason to pick Punk over Bryan because they see the Shield as more of a challenge than the Wyatt family because the Wyatts are just a bunch of rednecks from Florida and the Shield is this unit that's together and board like for a while they were undefeated as a unit and that kind of stuff. Like they could really build up the Shield like being like this great thing, and the Wyatt family they could kind of not so much bury but kind of underplay how awesome they are.
Yeah,
just for the sake of making it look like Daniel Bryan's win wasn't as impressive as Punk's. But to me, this really, like, these three matches, the two 3-on-1 matches and the main event, are going to determine the Royal Rumble main event and the WrestleMania main event. Because if Orton and Punk win, that's our Rumble main event, and then Orton Bryan is Mania.
Right.
If Cena wins, then well, obviously, then, like I said, I think that if Bryan wins, then Cena would win, and then we would get those two at Rumble. Sadly, I think Cena would win. And then I have no clue. We would probably get Orton Cena again at Mania.
Oh, man.
Nobody wants to see it. I don't want to see it, that's for sure.
I don't want to see it.
But that's been something that people have been predicting since, like, August.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. You know...
I could even see Sheamus Cena if Sheamus comes back by Rumble.
Yeah, that's another thing too. He gave an interview recently, and when he says when he comes back, that's his focus, man. Is that world title? I think Sheamus is coming back as a heel for the record.
Yeah, that's why I said him versus Cena.
Yeah, he's definitely coming back as a heel. And you know what? I guess the only solace I take is that I know while I've been hearing the rumblings that CM Punk will probably be retiring in a few years because he's just so beaten up. It's not going to be this year. I don't think Punk's going to really feel comfortable walking away until he gets that WrestleMania main event. And I would hope that even if he's not going to share the stage with Bryan, it would be something huge like Cena or Orton or whatever. Sheamus would.
I don't understand why people even want Bryan Punk as a WrestleMania event. I don't.
Why is that?
Why would I don't understand why somebody would. If those two guys going against each other is the main event of WrestleMania, that just doesn't make sense. Like, first of all, it will never main event because those two guys will never occupy or monopolize the WWE Championship picture ever again. Now that we're getting what we're getting, unless by some miraculous, horrendous, like freaking limo or bus crash, John Cena, Randy Orton, and Sheamus, and probably even Big Show all end up injured at the same time, and it's WrestleMania season, and then they have no other choice. And even then, they would bring in The Rock and put him against him. Like, that is never going to happen. If you want Punk to be in the main event, hope that it's against Cena, or hope that it's against Brock Lesnar, or even hope that it's against The Rock. Like, I'm not saying that that's what I want, but Punk Bryan in the main event is never going to happen because the WWE doesn't see those two guys as guys that can draw by themselves.
I hate to concede, but perception is reality, and I don't think WWE views them that way either. I mean, I view them that way, and I think a large majority of the viewing audience. And I know you're big on both those guys too, so it's not even like you're a detractor. I know you're a huge supporter
there
of
are
both
two
guys.
kinds of main eventers in the WWE. There's the attraction, and that's your Cena, Orton, Big Show, Rock, Brock, Taker, and then there's the guy who's going to make the attraction look good in their matches, and that is Punk, Bryan, Mysterio, Ziggler, that classification. And no two of those guys will ever. I mean, two of the attractions will face each other, but no two match guys will ever face each other in a main event of a WrestleMania ever.
Right. It's a shame. It's a shame, but I can't help but agree when you put it that way.
I mean, the last time that happened, it was Triple H and Chris Jericho, and the crowd was completely dead for it because the real attraction was the match before that.
Right, Rock Hogan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
WWE knows better. They learned from that, and especially now that Triple H is in charge and he had to deal with the dead crowd in that main event, he knows never to do that again.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I could see Punk or Bryan making up one half of it, but both of them sharing it, I really think is an impossibility. And I don't know whose ear I wanted to be. I mean, Daniel Bryan's just been so hot right now that I think he deserves to be one half of the WrestleMania 30 main event because
that's absolutely, and that's why I'm saying the WrestleMania main event that I want is Bryan versus whoever the champion is at the time, even if it's Cena. Bryan Cena at the WrestleMania main event, I would love to see. Their SummerSlam match, in my eyes, was definitely in the argument for match of the year. Bryan Orton, again, I would love to see it. Their matches aren't. I don't think that their match would be as good as Bryan Cena, but it would tell a better story because it would be the comeback story of the freaking year.
Right.
Like, and I just don't understand why people want Punk Bryan so much. We get it. They're both indie workers. Who cares? I don't see people running around freaking clamoring to see Daniel Bryan versus Seth Rollins in a WrestleMania main event. Why is this like all of a sudden people are like on their knees begging for Punk Bryan at WrestleMania? Even if it isn't the main event, here's the thing. First of all, it's never going to be a main event. We've already established that. Second of all, if it isn't the main event, why would you want it when one of these guys could be in the main event by themselves with somebody else?
See, that's true too, because while I definitely want to see another set of matchups between these two guys this close, when one of them definitely deserves a WrestleMania main event, and me personally, I think it's been more Bryan's year than
No,
Punk's.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
Punk does eventually need to have one. I think that his match against Taker should have been, but of course we had to deal with the crap fest that was Cena Rock.
Right. Um, so they both definitely deserve one at different times. I personally think already, my personal opinion, Punk will probably be part of the 31 main event. I just, for some reason, I can't see 30 right now. Maybe though. I mean, that's the crazy thing about this particular year is that I honestly don't know because Bryan just seems like such a clear-cut, obvious choice. But any given day that can change and be just totally turned around and flipped upside down. Um, but yeah, if those two were in a match together, even if it was like in a nice spot on the WrestleMania card, I mean the fact is if it wasn't the main event, I think that would sour just as many people than not getting it at all and just having one of them in the main event, like you said, because I think the public perception is both of these guys, whether they be at different times or what have you, deserve to be at that spot.
Right.
The matter is just getting them there.
I would rather have Bryan Cena as the main event of WrestleMania 30 and I don't know, Punk versus Brock Lesnar as the main event for WrestleMania 31 than Punk Bryan as anything but the main event on either one of those shows.
Right, right. So I'm really glad with how you put it, and I agree. I think the handicap matches, the outcomes of those matches, and of course the main event have huge implications to what's going to be the start to the road to WrestleMania and potentially even the finish. Because I mean, I think it's certainly going to set everything in motion. So I really liked how you put it. I agree with that, and one way or the other, I mean, we have been personally guaranteed that we are getting one champion. I made my clarifications on who I think. I said Orton if this, and John Cena if that. You pretty much did the same. Now all we do is wait, and when it unfolds, I think it's going to be a great event. Again, the only thing I really didn't care for about all this was the story that WWE told with the two named competitors, John Cena and Randy Orton.
And to me, this story wasn't even the problem. The execution on John Cena's part was the problem. Because he comes in and he acts like this is in the bag. Like, let me put it this way. If John Cena from the summer of 2011 would have had a match against John Cena from the winter of 2013, the 2011 guy would have said, you seem awfully arrogant for somebody that hasn't even won anything yet. What if you lose? You've been building yourself up like you're this gigantic, unstoppable force, but if you lose, you will have let all these people down. Like, that's exactly what John Cena from 2011 would have said to John Cena now.
Well, that's John Cena from 2011. That's exactly what he said to 2011 CM Punk.
Well, that's why I said that, because that's the kind of promo that he cut.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing. I don't understand where he gets off thinking that this is so easy. And shame on
because
WWE.
All Cena wins.
But shame on WWE for not even having Orton come out and try and fight the tides that are crashing
into him. What's he going to do? If he buries Cena, then it's just even worse.
Damn it, Cena.
If he builds Cena up, then it makes it really look like Cena can't do anything but destroy him. Orton's hands were tied because of what Cena did.
Just why did Cena have to go there? There are a million routes you can go with a heel to bring him down. You had to go there. God damn it. Like, he didn't even go there with Edge when they had their infamous, TLC match because, Edge had the advantage because it was his match. And, but Cena didn't try.
God. That match right there, the moment that the WWE Universe turned on John Cena, right there, that match.
Yeah.
The entire crowd wanted Edge to win that match. And Cena was supposed to be the babyface, and yet Cena won anyways.
Because
yeah. We even just had a discussion on TwitWow about how the reason the fans turned on John Cena is because he won without them. And he won that match even though everybody was in the corner of the other guy.
Yeah. And it was understandable why. First of all, the match took place in Edge's hometown.
Right.
Second of
That
all,
would have been like John Cena beating CM Punk in Chicago in 2011.
right, right, absolutely.
That would have made Cena a full-fledged heel. People would have hated him.
Oh, definitely.
Especially because I think that if that would have happened, Punk would have legit been gone.
Right, yeah. I agree.
He wouldn't have come back if the WWE would have just moved on with Cena as champ.
I agree with that. Definitely, because if you hear Punk's interviews and like him going on, he was just so frustrated with the machine, like not being able to get any of the cogs to move in his favor, that if he was to get that slap in the face, he'd be like, yeah, done. All these contracts you're putting in front of me, and you couldn't even give me that moment in front of my hometown. Screw you. You can piss on that paper, and then he would have left.
Maybe if Edge's contract would have been running out in January of that year, he would have been able to win.
Maybe. I mean, it just everything made sense. He had the home crowd. He had his match. For John Cena to win with no backing, yeah, that really is.
Those were the kind of odds that Cena shouldn't have been allowed to overcome.
Because a modern day like huge babyface like Daniel Bryan really is right now. I don't think he would have won a match under those circumstances. I honestly don't. I think Daniel Bryan would have come up short. And here John Cena.
If they would have found a way to get an entire crowd in the corner of the guy standing across from Daniel Bryan, and I mean, right now, good freaking luck finding a way to do that. But if they would have, you're darn right he would have lost, and the crowd would have loved it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way Cena won too, I mean, it was an exclamation point. It was an FU. No, yeah, it was an FU off the ladder through two tables.
Oh.
Two tables.
I thought he was tapped for some reason.
Oh, yeah, no, it was, they were on the top of the ladder, they were fighting. Cena overpowers Edge, and he FUs him off the ladder through two tables, and he takes the belt down. What? Like, any other babyface, and I hate to bring this match up, but you know what? Honestly, it was so good, I don't even care. When you look at Jeff Hardy versus The Undertaker for the Undisputed Championship in that ladder match, even though Jeff Hardy lost, so maybe it's a little bit counterproductive to what we're talking about here, I mean, when you're a babyface in that type of match, I mean, you literally have to limp up that ladder to even graze your fingertips on the belt.
Was that the one where JR was doing the make yourself
yeah. Yeah, that was the one. That was the one. And to me, Jeff Hardy played the role of that kind of babyface better than John Cena did on this night because really it was a case of overpowering. Like, I'm stronger than Edge. I chucked him off this ladder, and that's it. Like, it wasn't that slow crawl, when maybe he FU'd him through an announce table or something, and then he just has to crawl and scratch up the ladder and really create that atmosphere. Nope. I'm massively OP, so I win.
Lol, Cena wins.
It's just, and I'm not really one to rag on Cena a lot, and I know you aren't either compared to the rest of the internet. Like, what he's getting right now, he should be thankful because we're the tame ones. If you go to other corners of the internet, it gets a lot worse. I have heard people actually say that they want John Cena to die, okay? And we're not nearly that bad. But, Mike, why would you go that route with somebody who really is your biggest rival in WWE now that Edge is gone? Because I think that, as I said on Twitter, the debate always was.
I don't think Cena's ever pinned Punk one-on-one.
Yes, he did. Because remember when Punk was heel and John Cena put his WrestleMania main event on the line against The Rock against Punk? And
yeah, that was yeah. But still, that's one out of how many matches?
Yeah, and I was just about to follow that up. You do have a point because even though that was one, compared to all the matches they have had, Punk just
that might have been the last match that they had too, chronologically.
Yeah, that's the last match they've had so far. To date. I'm sure we'll get back to that again, in all honesty, because they've returned to Randy Orton and John Cena, and man, only 4 years ago they exhausted that feud to death. So now we're back here.
I think that in a fantasy world, I would love for John Cena to pull a turn in this match and side with the Authority, but we both know that won't happen.
Like, if he did that, I could almost, maybe not entirely, but almost forgive the promo work done by Cena.
You know what? If that would happen, I would entirely forgive it, because that, to me, Orton's done at that point. Orton gets demoted. Maybe he feuds with Big E Langston for the Intercontinental title. Get out of the main event picture. Maybe we get John Cena versus Big Show, or maybe John Cena versus Punk at the Rumble. But then when Daniel Bryan beats him at Mania, are you kidding me?
That's huge. Yeah, no, that pop is just explosive,
But
dude.
Again, Cena turning heel is just so far out into left field. Like, I wish that it was, like, They turned Austin heel.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And dude, you know what? And I don't want to be that like, because I agree completely with everything you're saying. I guess my big gripe is, and I hate to be that guy because I don't mean to say it in this like in this douche way, but I almost get tired talking about it because they've had so many great chances to do it, and this, tonight is another great chance. It really saddens me. They're not going to pull the trigger. You
No.
and I know it. Everybody knows it, and
And you
that's
know
what
what though?
frustrates me.
Here's the thing. Just because Cena is Cena, even as a tweener babyface type guy, Brian's pop for beating him at Mania is still going to be gigantic.
Oh, it would be no, it would be huge. One, because it's John Cena, who is just the leper of the WWE with how people treat him, minus the women and the children. And if he would do a full-fledged heel turn, that's gone. Can you imagine the children when Hulk Hogan turned? The women's
Yeah.
garbage. Now I don't know if Cena would.
That's the thing. Like, the way Hulk Hogan was over as a babyface, now, he was the same exact way as John Cena. The kids and women fell for it. They loved it. And the casual fans enjoyed it. The people who were really into the business and really like watched every episode, and like us, they were really just oversaturated. Not as oversaturated as I think we are, because they didn't have, they might have had the internet, but it wasn't as easy to access as it is now.
Right.
They were just as jaded by Hulk Hogan as we are by John Cena. And when Hogan turned, and you know what? WCW had to have given up a lot of revenue streams by doing that too. Maybe not as many as the WWE would give up by doing it to Cena, but they still had to give up.
I don't know, dude, because if what and you know that figure I keep bringing up, if John Cena legitimately brings in 100 million to that company, to me it's a gamble.
I just said WCW probably didn't give up as many revenue streams as the WWE.
I thought you were saying the opposite. I thought you said WCW gave up more with Hogan than potentially
No,
WWE would with Cena.
no, probably not nearly as much as the WWE would need to.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Yeah, I thought you said the inverse. So yeah.
But like, the way that it worked, and even after the heel turn, quote unquote heel turn, Hulk Hogan turned into a cool guy. He went from good guy that was loved by casuals and hated by the inside fans to bad guy that was hated by pretty much everybody. But relatively quickly after that, he was a cool guy, and he was getting cheered by the same guys that were booing him before, and booed by the same women that were cheering him before.
And you know what the great thing would be if John Cena would take advantage of having membership within the authority. Really, the content and the style of his promos really wouldn't have to change. He could talk about that he did it because he is that Make-A-Wish guy and because he does so much for the WWE that it only makes sense to join with like-minded people who really know what's best for business.
Are we talking about John Cena pulling a Bo Dallas?
Oh, are we?
He's a heel, but he still thinks he's a babyface.
Right. But with John Cena, though, it would be far more refined and I think less obnoxious in the sense that it's not as in your face. I think
Dude,
it would be.
That would be so perfect.
I really believe that's the route they should take if John Cena was going to do this.
Bo Dallas isn't mean. He's a really nice guy when somebody else is nice to him. Like, if a kid comes up to him and asks for his autograph, he's, oh, yeah, absolutely, no problem. Are you a believer? And he's such a sweetheart. But, he's such a scathing douchebag.
And John Cena would be the same way. He could just be like, in one sense, like, you don't know what it's like.
Oh, my God.
Knowing that
Bo Dallas is John Cena's practice run.
Yeah. No, it really is, because on one hand, he could be like, you don't know what it's like being the man that you bear on your back, the fact that you bring in millions to this company, and if you were to leave tomorrow, its foundation would completely shatter, and you don't know what it's like, granting the wishes for the kids that, really seem to be having their last few days on Earth, and I want to be with people that understand the severity and the enormity of those actions and how it reflects our business, and, things like that. Really, it would be like John Cena being Bo Dallas, but really the martyr version almost. Like, I would want John Cena to really think that he's doing this because he is the end all be all for WWE. He is the life support of this huge system. And then you have Daniel Bryan come out and he's like, no, 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 because to remind everybody what Triple H once said when he used to be something more than a corporate sellout. No one man. Well, actually, I think Vince said it, but then Triple H copied it. No one man is bigger than the WWE. And John Cena, when you look in the mirror, I want you to know that that even includes you. And bam, we have something. So I think with John Cena with his heel gimmick, it would be part Bo Dallas, part like corporate martyr is how I would describe it. And you could have something beautiful. But again, I
And he
feel
would, like I said, he would still think that he's a babyface. He would still pander to the fans. He would still do Make a Wish. He would still get the endorsements. But the authority would be behind him. He would get more boos by people that are kind of like buying into it. I think that more of the insider fans who watch NXT and kind of know about it would actually get behind him because I mean Bo Dallas has made it entertaining. If he's managed to do it, I can't imagine Cena wouldn't.
Oh no, Cena would take it to a whole nother level. And honestly, Ashton, you and I have both complained at length about Triple H syndrome. I think if John Cena displayed this kind of heel, I think it would kind of downplay that a little bit and maybe make it a little bit easier to swallow with how Triple H acts because we always have to take that into consideration. We don't
Right,
know how
because
Triple
like
H is going to play.
Triple H giving John Cena basically being favorable towards Cena, would that make the fans respond better to Triple H? Or because Cena is kind of like a weird douchey heel, would that like how would that even work?
Right, and at the end, I think the fans would come to the conclusion when they see Daniel Bryan, because of course, as a natural consequence, John Cena would have to sign on to the fact of the authorities' belief that, hey, Daniel Bryan, you're good, but just not good enough in our line of work. And that's all you need because John Cena can still be with the sick kids, all these endorsements. The live crowds wouldn't care about that because they know what they want and they want Daniel Bryan, and you have your story. And you could have Daniel Bryan say, you know, you used to be just a parody of pro wrestling, but after selling out like this, you've gone from being a parody of pro wrestling to being a parody of a human being. You disgust me. And then just really have Brian lay into Cena. And I think you'd have a great story there. But I feel like I'm almost, exhibiting masochistic tendencies towards my lungs because I'm wasting all this air talking about it, and I don't think WWE is going to pull the trigger. And that's what
Yeah.
hurts.
Yeah,
That's what
sadly
hurts.
enough. Yep.
Man.
Well, I think that we just about outplayed that a little bit. We might have outstayed our welcome there. We kind of went a little bit too far into the fantasy realm. So if you have anything else to say,
No, I think you know what we did a lot of fantasy, but the reality is, I think this is going to be a solid show, worth checking out for everybody. And if for no other reason, guys, if this show is leaving for whatever reason a bad taste in your mouth, which I can understand to one degree or another, I think you owe it to yourself to watch it because this is going to lay the groundwork for the road to WrestleMania. And this is the time of year where I think all fans really the eager anticipation shines through, the fandom shines through. I mean, this is the beginning of what will ultimately be our Super Bowl. So I think everybody kind of owes it to themselves to really just check it out just to see the beginning foundations of where everything is going to head. And we've got some great matches on this card. The two handicap matches should really deliver. As I have said consistently, while the story has been shaky and weak, and I hate John Cena's performance in particular, the final in-ring product, I mean, these two in a TLC match should be something really good. So I am looking forward to that. The tag team title match is kind of that under the radar, but it'll come out of nowhere and really excite and electrify the crowd.
that'll probably curtain jerk.
Yeah, I agree. That will probably curtain jerk. The Divas match, again, a lot like the main event from an in-ring perspective, should deliver the story. And like I said, it's got one really good leg with AJ being champion. Biggie Langston Sandow. It's just it'll be a solid matchup that really puts more legitimacy on Big E's reign, which is good. Even the pre-show, I think will have some promise because look at who we're dealing with: Dolph Ziggler and Fandango. So to me, guys, those are our predictions. I cannot wait for live reactions. Tonight should be great. And then, of course, after that, we will have, because we're going to be doing what we did last time, Ashton, right? We're going to be doing a pay-per-view review Twitwell
Yes.
of TLC. So, yes, be on the lookout for that, guys. That's all coming to you. A lot of great content coming. I'm John. That's Ashton. This has been our TLC preview, and we'll see you tonight for live reactions.
And I also just want to kind of throw out there that I find it somewhat coincidental that on one of our more recent Twit Wows, we discussed about how the WWE for the last few pay-per-views has done just good enough of a job of building up the next one, but then an even better job of building up the one after that. And I am looking more forward to the Rumble now than TLC. And I'm looking forward to TLC, man. This card, the two 3-on-1 matches look amazing. I expect the tag match to be a great show-stealing type match. And whether I actually want to see it or not, we're both going to get invested into that main event match.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, what interests me most about this show is its implications for the Royal Rumble.
Right.
And because of that, the implications for the Royal Rumble on WrestleMania.
Definitely.
And now, this whole month, we've been talking about how much we're looking forward to this preview predictions video. And now it's over, and I cannot wait to do live reactions.
Definitely, because we're going to see so many things come to light in the wake of this show. It's really beginning, folks, starting tonight, because I have grouped in TLC as part of the big road to WrestleMania, simply because, again,
I think the road to WrestleMania starts with the TLC pay-per-view itself.
Yeah, definitely.
The build-up to TLC is the road to TLC, but when TLC starts, that's where the road to WrestleMania really begins.
I agree.
Because that's when all of the pieces start to fall in place for the Rumble, and the Rumble has huge implications for Mania. And even right after TLC, that first Raw after TLC is going to be the first Raw that we get Rumble hype.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as far as you and I are concerned, we have a lot of great things coming, which I am really looking forward to doing. It's going to be a great time, and we just got to get through this, and it's not even going to be that painful to get through because this does look like a solid show. Cannot wait to do live reactions. Ashton, any more comments you want to make?
I'm good.
I'm good too. So until then, guys, we will see you for live reaction. Then don't forget, be sure to check out TwitWow because we will be reviewing TLC. Until then, bring the tables, bring the ladders, bring the chairs, because it's going to be one hell of a show. We'll see you guys.